Imagine I flip a coin. Heads, you win $5,000. Tails, you lose 500. You'd take that bet in a heartbeat, right? Almost everyone would. The math is stupidly obvious. But here's what's strange. That same person, you maybe, will stare at an investment opportunity where the upside is 10 times the downside and do absolutely nothing. Not because they don't see the potential, but because something deep in their brain is screaming at them that losing $500 would be catastrophic. There's a specific circuit in your brain, wired by 200,000 years of evolution, that makes the pain of losing feel twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining. And by the end of this video, you'll discover a mental trick that Nobel Prize-winning economists use to shut that circuit off. But first, you need to understand just how much money it's already cost you. This is called loss aversion. And it was discovered in 1979 by two psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. What they found fundamentally changed how we understand human decision-making. Their research showed that losing something feels roughly 2 to 2.5 times more painful than gaining that same thing feels good. Let me say that again. The negative emotion of losing $100 is psychologically equivalent to the positive emotion of gaining $250. This isn't a character flaw. It's not because you're bad with money. It's literally how your brain is wired, and there's an evolutionary reason for that. 200,000 years ago, our ancestors were walking around the African savanna. And back then, the asymmetry between gains and losses was very real. If you found a patch of berries, great. You ate well today. But if you lost access to food for a few days, you died. If you found a nice cave, comfortable. But if you lost your shelter to a predator, you died. Losses weren't just inconvenient. They were existential threats. So natural selection favored humans who were hyper-focused on avoiding losses. The ones who stayed alive were the ones who treated every potential loss like it could be their last. The problem is, you inherited that same brain, but you're not on the savannah anymore. You're trying to decide whether to invest in your 401k, and that prehistoric wiring is costing you a fortune. Let me show you exactly how this plays out. Scenario 1. You're 28 years old. You've got $5,000 saved up. You start reading about index funds. The S&P 500 has averaged about 10% annually over the last 50 years. You know this. The data is crystal clear, but you hesitate. What if the market crashes right after I put my money in? What if I lose some of that $5,000? So you keep it in your savings account earning 0.01%. And over the next 30 years, that hesitation costs you roughly $60,000 in missed returns. Now you might be thinking, well, what about 2008? What about the market crashes? Valid question. But here's what loss aversion does. It makes you hyper-focus on the worst possible outcome while completely blinding you to the most probable outcome. And historically, the most probable outcome of investing in a diversified portfolio over any 20-year period has been positive returns. Every single time. Scenario 2. You're renting an apartment. You could buy a modest place and start building equity. The monthly payment would be roughly what you pay in rent. But what if housing prices drop? What if I buy and the value goes down and I'm underwater? So you keep renting. And while you're waiting for the perfect moment that never comes, housing prices climb 4%, 6%, 8% a year. Over a decade, that delay might cost you $100,000 or more in equity you never built. Scenario 3. And this one's the most painful. You're in a job that pays okay, $60,000 a year. But you've been offered a role at a startup. Lower base salary, $50,000. But with equity, that could be worth nothing or could be worth $300,000 in 4 years. The expected value is massively positive, but all you can think about is that $10,000 pay cut. This is loss aversion in action. The guaranteed loss of $10,000 in salary feels worse than the potential gain of $300,000 feels good. So, you stay. And 4 years later, your former colleague who took the startup job just put a down payment on a house with their equity payout. Now here's where it gets really insidious. Loss aversion doesn't just affect the decisions you make. It affects the decisions you refuse to make. Psychologists call this the omission bias. We feel less responsible for bad outcomes that come from inaction than bad outcomes that come from action. If you invest and lose money, that feels like your fault. You did something and it went wrong. But if you don't invest and miss out on years of gains, that doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like nothing happened. Except financially, the result is identical. Actually, it's worse, because inflation is actively eroding your cash while you sit there. Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2002 for this work. And in his research, he found something fascinating about people who learn to overcome loss aversion. They reframe the decision. Instead of asking, "What could I lose?" they ask, "What's the expected outcome over a large number of similar decisions?" They think like a casino, not like a gambler. A casino doesn't obsess over any single hand of blackjack. They know they'll lose some. They're playing the law of large numbers. Over thousands of hands, the math guarantees they come out ahead. You can do the same thing with your money. When you're faced with a financial decision, instead of fixating on the worst-case scenario, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What is the most likely outcome, not the worst possible outcome? 2. If I make this same type of decision 10 times over the next decade, what's my expected result? 3. What is the cost of doing nothing? That third question is the one that'll change your financial life. Because the cost of doing nothing is almost never zero. Inflation, opportunity cost, missed compound growth. These are silent killers. Let's go back to that coin flip from the beginning. Heads you win 5,000, tails you lose 500. The expected value of that bet is $2,250 per flip. If someone offered you that deal once a month for the rest of your life, you'd be insane not to take it. But here's the thing. That's essentially what long-term investing is. You're accepting short-term volatility, which feels like potential loss, in exchange for near-certain long-term gains. The data backs this up. Over any rolling 20-year period in the last century, a diversified stock portfolio has never lost money after adjusting for inflation. Never. Your brain doesn't care about that, though. Your brain cares about what happened this week. What happened to your portfolio today? Because that 200,000-year-old wiring is still running in the background, treating every temporary dip like a threat to your survival. So the real skill isn't learning to pick the right investments. The real skill is learning to sit with the discomfort of potential loss long enough for the math to work in your favor. And the people who figure this out early, in their 20s and 30s, are the ones who end up with options later. The option to retire early. The option to take career risks. The option to say no to work they don't want to do. All of that starts with recognizing when your prehistoric brain is making your modern financial decisions. Every financial opportunity you've ever passed up because you were afraid of losing what you had, that wasn't wisdom. That was your amygdala trying to keep you alive on the savannah. So the next time you're hesitating on a decision where the upside clearly outweighs the downside, ask yourself, am I protecting my future or am I protecting my feelings right now? Because those are 2 very different things. If you want to keep building a better relationship with money, there's more where this came from. The channel explores stuff like this every week, the psychology behind why we make the financial decisions we do, and how to make better ones. No pressure either way. But if that sounds useful, you know where the subscribe button is.